which is if you roll in there with your corporate spiel, you know, you can get eaten alive on Reddit. If you're doing things just to, and I'll call it manipulate the results, you're likely not building any equity in your business.
In terms of mainstream, because how you're on Reddit or how you're on Trustpilot or how you're here, they were good things to do before ChatGPT came along.
The first thing kind of that raised my eyebrow was when we were getting data back where it was saying site quality score. Why the hell are we using the term hallucination? We had a term for this before and it's bullshit.
I'm delighted to be joined by Mark Williams-Cook, a fantastic and experienced SEO. Mark, can you please just give us an introduction to yourself, your businesses, and just in terms of what you do today?
Yeah, sure. Well, firstly, thank you for having me. Super happy to be here.
It's a pleasure.
I've been working in SEO for over 20 years now, which in fairness doesn't mean a lot. It could mean either I'm really good at it and really experienced, or I'm really bad that I've had to do it this long. But I'll let people take from that what they want. At the moment, I'm the director of an agency based in Norwich in the UK called Candour, which is independently owned 25-person agency. It's been going about a decade and all we do is SEO. I also run a SaaS tool called AlsoAsked, which if you haven't heard about, great. If you have heard about it, I guess even greater, because the marketing's working. It's like an intent research tool, which hopefully everyone should find helpful. And through Candour as well, we actually have a few other businesses. So, for instance, we've got a UK based pet e-commerce business to try and practice what we preach to clients as well. My experience is mainly agency side, although in and out, I've done freelance work. After my first agency job, I ended up just being a full-time affiliate. So living the affiliate life of, you know, getting up at 11 in the morning, eating cereal in your pants and talking to the pigeon on the windowsill when you get lonely. But I went back to agencies, which is, I think, was a really good thing for me to meet other sort of people that were much smarter and more experienced than me, rather than just sitting in my bedroom spamming eBay affiliate links. But so fairly well-rounded, haven't done much in-house, but still out there at the moment. I'm mainly, from an agency point of view, I still get my hands dirty, mainly with technical stuff now, do lots of research and testing for the agency to try and make sure what we're doing is working, we're doing it in the best way, in the most efficient way, and we're prepared for all the stuff that's happening. A lot of strategy stuff, and as well, working on the product development of AlsoAsked. And the marketing of all those things as well. So loads of spare time, really.
Yeah, it's never ending. Yeah. Mark, no, thank you so much. And we're going to talk about your experience at Candour, your amazing product, which I'm a customer of, AlsoAsked. We're going to jump into GEO, whether it is SEO in disguise, and also talk through your history with the security flaw that you found in Google, which I think everyone will be extremely interested to hear about. But thanks so much for joining us.
Can I just take 30 seconds of your time and ask that you subscribe to Franc Talking? Some might say the best newsletter on everything happening in AI search today. If you want to keep up to date with the latest news, events and happenings in the world of ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Google, Franc Talking is the newsletter for you. The link is in the description. Now, back to the show featuring Mark Williams-Cook.
So, Mark, I think the market's decided that GEO is the term over AEO, so generative engine optimization over answer engine optimization. And there is still a debate on whether this is the evolution of SEO, the next phase of SEO. I've spoken previously about when I've been head of SEO, and also head of organic performance. It's doing the same role, but it's how you can then sell it internally if you're working in-house, because sometimes there is this negative connotation towards SEO. You're the keywords guy and all of this stuff. And you're like, it's a lot more than that, than just looking at some keywords for a page. But there is an issue where people are saying, and it's usually to sell a product, how throw the SEO playbook out. And this is all GEO, right? And you've been very outspoken with the Scooby-Doo meme about
You've seen it.
SEO. I have indeed, many times. I like it. But I'm just keen to get your thoughts on where you are now. We've seen ChatGPT integrate instant checkout. We've seen a Walmart partnership this week. And we've seen the apps integration as well, which is really exciting for marketeers. But I'd love to get your thoughts on where we are now with AI search. Just a small question to start with. So.
Yeah, right. So I guess, to be honest, I don't really care what people call stuff in a way, because everyone has their own slightly different definition for various parts of, marketing in general, and certainly specialisms like SEO. And when I have disagreed with people, and I've tried to understand why I disagree with them, and they've explained, well, because I think this is this, I end up agreeing with them, because I think, well, yes, if we agree that we define these things as this, then we could call it this, yes. So I guess my reservations, if we talk about GEO as a naming convention, is firstly, I think that name just sucks, because GEO already means a whole bunch of other stuff in the English language. If you Google GEO, you're not getting anything about generative engine optimization yet, at least. So I think that's ripe for confusion, firstly. And I agree with what you said about maybe SEO, especially historically. Oh, you're the keywords guy, right? Like you, I imagine like you, I spent a lot of time 10 plus years ago sitting around board tables trying to argue for some budget for SEO while getting some sort of down the nose looks from various other marketing departments, right? Now SEO is like a multi-billion-dollar industry, and I think it is credible now. People know that there's lots of money there and it's worthwhile doing. And I don't want to have to, I guess, through tiredness, go through that whole process again with GEO, especially when I think the important thing about a discipline like that is what it is, not how you do it. And GEO as a concept, if we're going to call it that, personally, I just like the term used, which is actually AI search. As a concept, there are lots of differences from a marketing perspective in terms of how users are using it, how we measure it, and the whole paradigm of how people are behaving online, which has impacts on marketing strategy. The set of things, the what you do to impact these things at a strategic level, in my opinion, is fundamentally the same things you do for SEO, although how you do them may be differently. And I don't think personally that's enough of a change to give it a whole new separate area, because how I have done SEO has changed radically over 5, 10, 20 years. That's the nature of SEO. It evolves with the technology. And again, I think I watched an episode with with Dwayne Forrester, right, talking, and I think he was saying that, it's like ChatGPT isn't a search engine. I guess this is the definition thing. So for me, like, search is about when someone doesn't know digitally where they're going and they're having to use a tool to find that place or that information for them. So again, it comes down to what these broader definitions are. And to me, it's always been about those search journeys wherever they're happening, So I'm not bothered about conversations about Google, Bing, TikTok, Baidu, Amazon, ChatGPT. To me, it's all people are trying to find some information, and within those tools, they move around in different ways. When I've specifically said to people, just name me 3 things that you do for GEO that you do not do for SEO, I haven't had anything there that I wouldn't class as kind of like this trick currently works. And again, all those things are super tempting, right? And they sell the get my playbook for this and my guide for this. And, I think, like Dwayne says, well, TikTok, Instagram's full of the reels of people promising to tell you the one thing, right? And we've been through that road with SEO, in that the way Candour approaches SEO is we say, we'll work out with you what the best thing to do for your business is, and we will do that in the most SEO friendly way possible and work out how we can integrate it. What we don't do is say, what do we need to do for SEO? And then try and see how the business pushes a round peg into a square hole into that. Because if you're doing things just to, and I'll call it manipulate the results, you're likely not building any equity in your business. So to give you the classic example, within SEO, like buying links works, right? You can definitely rank better if you buy links. Now, my view on that is generally at some point, Google will work out those links are bought. If you disagree with that, you're fundamentally saying that technology has stopped progressing, which I've got a long historical case studies to prove that's not the case. So at some point, those links will be worth nothing, right? And because they were only, created or bought with the intention of manipulating the search result, once the ranking value is gone, you are left with zero value. If you went down the route of, okay, we have a digital PR strategy because we want to be seen like this, and we're going to make these interesting stories for our customers, and then they get coverage and they get links. Even if search engines cease to exist the next week, you still have the value of that article talking about you. You've had the effect with your customers, and then maybe it's done all the cool things, like that's triggered conversations on Reddit. So like these are the other tactics, right? Where I've seen really regularly, it's like, oh, ChatGPT cites Reddit a lot, so we need to be marketing on Reddit and you need to get your brand posting on Reddit. And I'm kind of like, well, if you have a strategy that resonates with your actual customers, you can be the spark of the conversation that makes them go and talk on Reddit, which one, scales because you don't need to be there trying to usher people along. And two, you totally mitigate the risk, which I think many new people to Reddit overlook, which is if you roll in there with your corporate spiel, you can get eaten alive on Reddit. I've been there a long time. Like my Reddit account's old enough to buy beer now, and I've seen companies come and go and get torched there. So, this is why, again, it's a longer term view and it's not as attractive, I think, especially for people that are like, what's the ROI? What's the result I'm going to get?
There's a lot to unpack there. And I think that's a very thorough overview. And I don't disagree with any of that. So a few things. You're talking about obviously purchasing backlinks, and you'll get the argument. So I'm 100% in agreement with you, but you'll get the argument, everyone's doing it. Everyone's doing it. And you see people and it will catch up with you. I've no doubt, like post Penguin, it just, why can't you just have a better strategy I always found it to be very transactional. You give us X amount, we're going to get this back for you. And yeah, I even had a chat with an agency a couple of weeks ago, and it was just like they packaged it up. No, we don't buy links. We have a retainer with this publisher that they do stuff for us. I'm like, all right, well, still the same thing. I also like as well, because I've seen you put before that you've said to clients, your business isn't right for SEO. Like there to be very clear and transparent that we will look at your business and what you need, and whether that is ASO, mobile app strategy, or whether that is more ABM or something like that. And then you can be very clear to say, because you can just get consultants and agencies that you definitely need the disavow line item that we're putting in here. Like we need to update this weekly. And you're like, do you? Like, do you know what I mean? So like I said, I do think that's quite very refreshing. The Reddit side of things, I've said this a number of times, and I'm not very active on Reddit. I will drop in and out. I will post now and again, but it's more about growth initiatives that I'm interested in. But yes, I feel like all of the media that we will consume and read, like Reddit, like post on Reddit, that's going to be the best way to do it. And you need a community management strategy if you're very clear on what you want to achieve from it, because otherwise, like you say, you're going to get eaten alive. Like the mods are not going to accept, and they will see straight through you. So I definitely think that is a watch out for brands. And also experienced marketeers will know that should know that you can't just buy your way in there. Obviously you can have ads, but they're not as effective. But yeah, I'm 100% with you on it. The one last bit I wanted to touch on the GEO side was how I always look at things as well, is I never want to stand still. So if I keep talking about optimizing for featured snippets, or looking at actually, I do want to talk to you about Schema as well. But say I look about sorry, so lots of things I've got here that we can go through. But if I want to show and I want to develop myself, so if we do have 800 million weekly active users on ChatGPT, we know that they're shipping stuff there. We know there's partnerships. We know there's a lot of investment in this. We could start to see things evolve that are completely different from what we've seen in Google. So for me, I always want to make sure that if I talk to clients, it's showing that evolution. Whether you need a new name for it, that's a discussion point. But it is different to what we've seen before, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the interesting thing for me about these tools is, you know what I mean when I say Google foo, right? You've got people in your life that they know how to kind of poke a search engine to get the result that they want. And as interestingly, I think Google foo has become less effective over the years as we've had updates like BERT, which are more kind of semantic, because I can be really specific and use all my like operator tricks and I still can't quite get the results I used to, right? That's good, I think, for people in general, like the layman user. And the cool thing about the AI search platforms is you don't need to learn how to search. You just have a conversation, which most people do day to day, right? It's a very human way of interacting. And the same with, you know, the interaction when you do a traditional search term is kind of like a one shot. This is the kind of one bit of information I'm looking for. I find that. What else do I need to know? Whereas with the AI search platforms, you can write a whole paragraph and be really specific about the thing you're looking to find and package it all up. And it's really good at dismantling that and going off and finding the bits and reconstructing it. And then you can use, obviously, that answer as the next natural kind of set of questions. So I think from a usability UX point of view, for informational stuff, it's really attractive. I think my worry is at the moment, if you find, so let's just take my poor parents as an example. If they find information online through Bing or Google or whatever, they're aware when they visit a website, it's written by a human. Humans are fallible. They're definitely biased. So they'll think about, hopefully, you know, oh, this is on the Daily Mail, or I know this author that wrote this, or this person looks sketchy. So, and that's something intrinsic to being human, right? You understand, okay, this is a person telling me this, they might be wrong. I think everyone's, most people's defenses are down with AI generated answers, because if you stop someone on the street and are like, 30 seconds, tell me how large language models work, you're probably not going to get an answer, right? So I think people are unaware of the hallucination issues in LLMs. And it's caught my parents out before several times. And I've had discussions with them. My dad's Googled something. He's like, oh, it's this. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right. And he's like, well, Google says it. And I look and it's the AIO, right? And then we actually visit the site and have a look and, oh, no, it's wrong. Because Google is such a trusted brand specifically with the AIOs, and because AI is like this term that the tech industry uses words very liberally, like thinking and reasoning, which obviously they are not doing in any way that we do, it dresses it up as something intelligent and trustworthy. So I just have a worry about that whole hallucination problem and how that's going to be solved, because it's not it's not financially motivating for the tech companies to tell people what's going on. I mean, come on, why the hell are we using the term hallucination? We had a term for this before and it's bullshit, right? It's just that when you've invested $5 billion in something and you're around a board investor table, nobody wants to hear that. So we call it hallucination, right? So yeah, there is, as you say, like, there's a whole load of other things we need to consider in terms of marketing, in terms of transacting, how people are making decisions. All of that's going to change. But from my pragmatic point of view of what are the things we need to do and learn, it's like an adjustment to me. It's like it should be the stuff you were doing all along. But I'm aware when you actually speak to SEOs, like you're saying, a lot of them actually weren't doing this stuff. So many people, I think, are almost rediscovering modern SEO.
Going back to the point I was saying about the keyword guy, like that was the misunderstanding of how UX plays a role, how If you have a section of your website that's of poor quality, that can bring down the overall website visibility, right? And it's just to have this, I think it was like a lot of thinking around, we'll just look at this page, what do we need to do on this, where you don't really understand the ecosystem around and how you build that authority, right? So yeah, and I think this has accelerated it even more for in terms of mainstream, because how you're on Reddit or how you're on Trustpilot or how you're here, they were good things to do before ChatGPT came along, right? So that's the key thing.
The interesting point there actually about so in my opinion, what made Google successful was basically their PageRank formula, right? That's what set them apart. And the reason I think it did such a good job for users was it was taking power away from webmasters from relying on how many keywords do you have on your page, right? And it was kind of democratizing, we're going to use links as a proxy for popularity and trust. I think the next step for that is the training data, like the memory, if you like, of LLMs, in terms of it's not even enough now to have lots of people linked to your website. We've got this machine that's read the whole internet, and you need to be consistently and positively talked about everywhere, which takes even more power away from you, because that's a lot harder than convincing some people just to link to you, whether you pay them or do digital PR, right? So I think that's, again, another reason why potentially we could maybe use that technology to improve web results, reduce spam, that kind of thing.
Definitely. And there are things even before that are still important now that do impact your organic performance. So like the amount of brand searches that would happen based upon above the line activity that would like impact I used to see it at Kazoo, because where I was head of organic performance, like there was a huge budget that was spent on sponsorships on TV, because I knew that was coming. And you're in a nice position because you go, right, here's my strategy. We're going to get a lot of organic press off this. We're going to have a lot of branded searches. And that's a signal to say that this is of interest, right? And so, again, I just think there's all of these things that go into what we have as a profession that really do help to kind of accelerate brands, and that will still be important, right? In terms of in this new AI search world.
Yeah, more so than ever. Yeah.
So it'd be good as well, Mark, to talk through some of the misconceptions that you've heard about and see as well. Schema, I know you've been very vocal on that. It's been really useful to see the experiments and things that you've done. Talk to me through some of the GEO misconceptions and what people are kind of spouting out to say this is gonna drive performance.
Yeah. So again, my view on this is, a lot of the time I'm not trying to say to people, you're wrong, this isn't a thing. I'm usually saying, what evidence do you have to say this? And then usually then telling people that's bad evidence. So like you mentioned Schema as the first thing. Schema is a really interesting one, actually. So, Schema is about providing kind of couplets of information to remove ambiguity for machines. We know Google has a knowledge graph, and specifically they have said their AI mode, Gemini, leans on Google's knowledge graph, which I would interpret myself as Gemini generates an answer, and then as part of the retrieval augmented generation process, it might do web searches, and it might reference things it mentions to the knowledge graph to kind of be like, is this a thing? Can I check this? So it's like a point of reference. The thing I've seen a lot of geo experts saying is, to get more visibility in things like ChatGPT, it's super important to have Schema as one of the things. And I would love someone to explain to me from a technical standpoint how that works, right? Because the web, in terms of traditional search, is a document-based thing that documents link together. The text is crawled and stored, and then they go through and, you know, pick out and work out what entities are, and schema can be used for that to explicitly label it to remove any ambiguity. From an LLM point of view, there is training data, the text well, this is the thing, right? So firstly, any source I've ever seen on training data for LLMs talks about pre-training and all the filtering that happens during this process. And as far as I can see, in every case, they are removing kind of code from that training data, which makes sense to me because the thing we're primarily trying to capture is the English language and the statistical relationships between all the little chunks and text of letters we use. If we just bunged loads of code into that as well, it kind of pollutes the mix, if you like. So, I mean, firstly from that technical point of view, I would expect schema to be removed and not even be in the training data. So why then can LLMs generate schema? Because there are millions of pages of documentation of schema as content on the web, and actually more helpfully surrounded by the context of how to use it. That said, LLMs can't generate schema consistently. They will very commonly make up properties and get things wrong, but it's no different to any other text in that sense. The other thing about LLMs is in terms of what's stored, it's not just storing like a search engine does a copy of the content. This is how they're getting around a lot of the kind of copyright stuff, right? They're just taking this training data, and then the model is all these billions or possibly trillions now, big number, of the parameters which essentially describe the relationship between different windows of sets of data they've tokenized. So the explicitity of this organization is Candour and this person is a person that works at Candour might appear in that statistical soup once or twice. So the specificity, there you go, of the schema is lost in that statistical soup, right? It can still generate, because I've seen organization type, many times I can do that. But the fact that Mark Williams Cook wrote this and he works at Candour is lost. So from that point of view, I have never had anyone explain to me how, from a training data point of view, that would make sense. And then we get to the retrieval augmented generation question of, they do web searches and they send the bot to the page and then it looks at the schema. And again, the tests I've seen where people have not included the schema data in the content and then ask questions about the schema, it hasn't actually managed to surface the data. And then people saying, well, it needs to be on the page as well, which is something Google says. I think possibly that's a few steps above complexity-wise where things like the ChatGPT crawler and stuff are at the moment. And that's a guess. It just seems like a really weird specific thing they would do. There's no documentation from any of these LLMs saying that they use schema. And, there's been a few tests where people said, I put schema on and then it got cited, 8% more or whatever. And again, fine. That's good that we're testing, but I can just find as well another bunch of tests that show the opposite. I don't think there's enough kind of statistical significance in that. They could be doing it. So I think feasibly what could happen is OpenAI could make their own kind of more traditional web crawler, build an index, and then build their own knowledge graph, which they could then use to ground some of their model answers, a bit like Google's doing. Yeah, sure. Maybe they are doing that. Maybe they will do that. But my point is, if you're selling the service now, telling people to do that, show me any kind of evidence that that's happening. And I have found none. And it doesn't make sense from a technical point of view. And I'm not saying schema's bad. Do schema. It helps search engines, and a lot of the stilts that LLMs stand on is based on search engines. So if we can remove ambiguity, etc., that's brilliant. You mentioned like things like the ChatGPT commerce side of things. I'm sure, that is going to lean much more heavily on kind of feeds and structured data and stuff like that. So I'm not saying any of these things are bad. I'm saying if you're telling people buy my GEO service because we need to do schema, chunking, and LLMs.txt, there's no evidence. So that upsets me.
And I think that was great. And yeah, you've left out cats.txt as well, which you've
So I actually have some stickers with me today for Brighton SEO that say I support cats.txt. So the LLMs.txt is an interesting one, right? So I think we're about to see data over the next few months that I got a preview into that shows, I think it's around 70, 80% of the LLMs.txt on the web are generated by WordPress Yoast's plugin. And it's interesting, this circular argument that it must be a thing because this site uses it. And then because that site uses it, another site uses it. And then everyone's like, oh no, they use it, we should put one on. And again, like I've seen people saying, and this is where the cats.txt thing came from. So for those that don't know, it was presented as evidence that these AI bots are crawling LLMs.txt. So it's being used. And then later on, another person was being like, oh, and Google's indexed it, so they're definitely looking at it. So I just made a file called cats.txt, which was some description of cats people own in the office with like a made up standard. And sure enough, within a week, it was being hit by Perplexity, by OpenAI bots, by Claude. Google indexed it. And I'm like, again, this isn't evidence that it's actually being used. And then you can even demonstrate that, information only in the LLMs.txt is surfaced. And again, that's just because it's treated like page content. You can ask now ChatGPT questions about the cats.txt on my blog, and it'll tell you the name of the cats. It's just because it's treated as any other kind of page of content on the web. So again, I find that, again, I want to be really clear here. I'm not kind of like punching down on people experimenting, doing things. I run all kinds of dumb experiments, like testing weird things, seeing what breaks, what doesn't. Documentation is wrong sometimes in Google's case. I've had Googlers tell me things that are incorrect as well. I love it when people test. What I think as an industry we need to be careful of and push each other for better standards in the industry is if we're selling these things, for premiums to other people and saying this is going to help, it needs to be like peer agreed, peer reviewed. We need evidence for that. It just makes me sad that some of the stuff is like the early SEO stuff of tricks, and they're not even tricks that work, but they're being sold and people are buying them because they get that FOMO. They don't want to miss out.
Yeah. And it was like, I saw one on, it was like, yeah, what you do is you just give negative feedback back on this competitor, like in ChatGPT, and that was seen as a tactic just to go in. And I feel like there's a much better use of time that you could have to kind of build a brand rather than,
I wonder if there'll be any new defamation laws for defamation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, again, generally as a strategy, right, it's normally better to work on making your things better than trying to make competitive things look worse. Like, again, building equity.
What kind of questions are clients asking about ChatGPT, Perplexity, AI mode, and how are you guys at Candour, how are you kind of tackling that?
Yeah, so the first kind of wave of questions, I guess, were really similar to the SEO questions we got before, which is, I typed this in and we were or were not there. Why? was the main one. And we've taken a pretty proactive approach on this. So a few months ago, and this was inspired by Will Reynolds, actually, we started recording every week like a 2, 3, 4 minute unscripted video where we picked a topic about AI search. I talk about it in context to our client work, and then basically we email it to all our clients. So we've been essentially every week drip feeding them about, okay, these are the main LLMs that people are using. This is how much on average traffic they're sending. It's not all about traffic. Here's what hallucinations are. Here are some of the dangers of AI. I think I shared that one publicly about, again, talking about hallucinations and how you can combat that. and we sent ones about how we've changed the reporting slightly. So we changed some of our Looker Studio stuff to include, various LLM traffic, and just try to give them context. And my main goal has been to, as always, like reduce expectations. I think, there's that Gartner hype cycle of the peak of inflated expectations, and we're very much, I think, teetering on the top of that. And I do feel there's a little bit, well, there's not a little bit, I feel there's definitely a big bubble around some of the AI stuff at the moment. And it's just been managing that proactively with the clients. So we're leading the conversation there. It comes up more kind of in client reviews, but I think the most common thing has been around how do we solve the reporting thing? Because even in Google, right, clicks are drying up. And for me, I'm really not worried about that, because at the most basic level, the same amount of people wanted to buy running shoes, as they did 6 months ago, and the same amount of people are going to push the same or more money over the web to get that. So it's not like the economy on the web's drying up; it's just changing where it's flowing. So, and I do think that's a really challenging question around measurement. I don't think anyone's cracked it yet, and there's a lot going against it in terms of privacy laws, in
Yeah,
terms of
yeah.
interests of companies. I think the last thing I'll say on that is I imagine at some point we will get some kind of GSC style data from LLMs, because I feel it's inevitable they are going to need to monetize what they're doing. I think OpenAI last year lost around $6 billion. This year, I think the last numbers I heard is something like between 11 and 14 billion. They're
Yeah, huge.
forecast to lose huge amount, right? And a paid OpenAI user loses them money. So they have to augment it with shopping or ads or affiliates or something. And I think the only way, or the way they're going to be able to sell that, is by demonstrating that they get these searches. Because, if you've ever worked with enterprise, right, it's incredibly hard to get any kind of budget unless you can have a spreadsheet that sort of predicts how much money they're going to get back from spending that much money.
OpenAI says its business will burn 115 billion through to 2029, and they have put in in terms of their forecast, new products, including free user monetization. I'll drop the chart in our newsletter when I publish it. But that starts from next year, where they're looking to monetize free users, which I can only see being mainly through ads. Yeah, 29 billion estimate for 2026, and then 2030, 174 billion. So I think it's safe to say ads will be coming at some point.
And I'm interested how people will react to that, because one of the big things when I speak to, again, people outside of the industry using AI is like, oh, it's great because there's no ads.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, I got bad news for you.
Yeah. Do you know, you said that, and it goes back to an earlier point on the trust side. Like, I was talking with a client as well. And again, this is like you've said, that it's not to look down or it's just the understanding of what it is. It's like, well, let's push on ChatGPT because that's unbiased. And you're like, but because it's not commercial intent, it's not like, and you're thinking, especially with the affiliate side of things, if you do a very commercial prompt, it takes all of this content when it does like a grounded search, and then pulls in a lot of this affiliate content that is then influencing that decision. Do you know? So it is an education as we move along, but I definitely think that we will see within the 12 months ads in ChatGPT. I also think you've seen the expandable and collapsible sponsored results that Google just rolled out. Like, I feel that could be something they might look at for AI mode as well, where it's like, yeah, we've got the ad, but you've got the option to kind of reduce that down. So I think that could be potentially something they're testing ahead of a broader AI mode rollout.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what Google do with AI mode. I saw a Googler at the Digital Olympus event earlier this year, and she said that Google doesn't expect AI mode to be used for more than, I think it was like 5 to 10% of all searches, which I found really interesting. because my initial thought was AI mode's probably going to be like the default.
I'm the same, yeah.
Mm.
So that's really interesting to hear.
Yeah, I don't know if it's whether what will happen is there will be like the AI mode is where you type the query in, but then it kind of dynamically routes you to the best kind of result. Because I have seen AI mode give basically 10 blue links type results. So I think maybe that's what she meant. I keep saying she, and because I apologize, the name has totally gone from me. And I saw her speak on a panel for like 10 minutes, and my memory's not that great. But yeah, that's maybe where I think I could see that going. So it like dynamically generates the type of result, and by AI mode, they meant a more conversational type thing rather than here's a list of places, which is good. Gives me it retains some of that old kind of click model, because I would like ideally websites to still be a thing because they're nice. I long for the GeoCities days.
We finished there on the AI mode and move into a more conversational search experience. We've seen data I'm sure from your client side, from public data as well, in terms of how queries or prompts, whatever we want to call them, are getting longer, more descriptive. And that brings me on to AlsoAsked. Like I said, I'm a customer of you guys. I think it's an amazing tool, and I fully recommend. I will put links into the newsletter. Talk us through how the idea came about and why it's even more important now to be looking at this type of data to really understand the questions people are asking.
Okay. So we have been using AlsoAsked, or I should say people also ask data, for 10 something years. So before AlsoAsked.com existed. And it was actually at an event in Norwich called Talking Tech. I was invited to speak at about SEO. And I kind of went through our research process and how we were looking at content. And I showed an internal command line tool written in Python that we used that essentially did what AlsoAsked did, scraped and categorized these clustered questions and how we integrated that into the content planning. And I was really surprised because I assumed a lot of people were doing this. And then after that talk, I had like 20 people reach out being like, oh, can you give us that tool? And I was like, yeah, it's a Python script. So I sent it around, and then that spread. And then I was getting bombarded essentially with like Python help requests, like, oh, it won't run because it says it's got the wrong version of Python, or how do I install the requirements? And I was just like, oh, like I can't give Python support to everyone. And then I think like a month later, I was still getting the odd email about this. And I was like, there's obviously a barrier to entry here to get this data, and nobody's doing it. So I was like talking to dev team, and I was like, I think we can just make a web version of this. And it took about 3 months, and we had the alpha up. And I was like, that was easy. I'll see if it's popular. And I think it was around November 2019-ish. We were like, here's the alpha. And it was really, really, really popular. Millions of searches were being done a month on it very quickly. At one point, it started to get into like the high 4 figures a month in terms of costs to do that. So I was like, this is like hugely expensive to run. So we just kind of switched it off for a bit. And then I was like, we need to make some kind of paid version if people want to use this, because obviously I'm just can't afford to run it for free. I naively, having never really done a proper SaaS tool before, thought, well, it took 3 months to build the alpha, another 3 months, we'll have the paid version. 1.5 years later, we finally launched the paid version, because it turns out when it comes to making something actually reliable, scalable, secure, and then all the problems you don't think about, like if you're selling a digital SaaS tool globally, you're responsible for calculating the correct tax in every single country, territory, and state in the US, and having merchants of records and all this stuff I had no idea about. I was like, I understand the tech. Which means then you need to integrate with other services which have their own issues. So that happened. And And I was really happy. A lot of the community still supported us, and we got to like a 5-figure MRR within like 12 weeks of launch, which was brilliant. Obviously, I had some people complain because people like free things. I got accused of doing a bait and switch, having a free tool and then charging money for it. And I was like, dude, like I can't afford to have it for free. So yeah, that was when we realized we could make a product out of it. And the data. So what I love about this data is the thing we mentioned about search queries getting longer has been a long-term trend. I have a book about Alta Vista when it came out, and it does all these quaint things like list the most common search terms, and they're all like 1-2 word things, like people search for dancing, and now people search for really specific things. And since we made a decade ago this transition into a more semantic type of search, so the meaning rather than the keywords, Google was talking about things, not strings. Tools like AlsoAsked, I think, are important because it doesn't matter exactly the string of text someone types. What's important is understanding what they actually want. And I think you mentioned this as well. All the technical stuff, all of the content layout, structuring, internal linking is your qualifier to appear in the SERP. To stay there, you need positive user signals. You need people clicking on your result, not just bouncing straight back to the SERP and clicking on something else. So to do that, you need to focus on intent. And the cool thing about like 99% of the questions in AlsoAsked is if you put them into any keyword research tool, they normally come up as 0 or no data. So I did this whole thing about 0 volume searches because so many people coming from the old days of search volume were just discarding stuff that had no data, being like, oh, it's 0. So nobody searches for it. And it's like, well, it's listed as a common question in Google. So someone's searching for it. So this really, for us, was such a good way to improve content at the page level. So that's the thing I'd say. There's a differentiation between different keyword tools when you're researching topics. If you're using something like Answer the Public, which was kind of really big for years and years before AlsoAsked. Answer the Public is primarily Google Suggest data. It's really good for like a topical level. This is the topic I want to write about. And AlsoAsked is used at the level of, okay, I'm writing about this. What do I need to include? There's an amazing talk from SMX West 2016 from senior Google engineer Paul Ha, talking about Google from an engineer's perspective. And in my opinion, it's one of the best insights we had for many years. And he spoke about Google internally as a metric for how well they are performing using TTR, time to result. So how long does it take a user from having the problem to solving that problem, including if they're going back and reformulating searches and then reading a thing and then going back and doing another search. The data that people AlsoAsked is giving you is pretty much what's the next most likely thing this person is going to search for. So the logic is, if someone is searching for that root question, these are very good candidates of information to include on that page, so you reduce their time to result. So if I'm looking to change a car battery, I know one of the most common questions is, which terminal do I disconnect first? Do I need to include that? And is it safe to do myself? I know is like another one. So I should include that information. So it's really a brilliant blueprint for how to make the best, most helpful content. I know Google you get people also ask questions on almost every search you do now. And it's because Google uses them as like an induction feedback loop as well of understanding queries. So, you do the query and then Google's kind of like, what next thing do you want to ask? And then uses that data to keep populating because they evolve over time. And that's the coolest thing. And I know I'm going on about this, but I'm really excited about it. One of the coolest things that people overlook is like when we have the election in the UK, the PAA results change within hours of stuff being on the news. And there's no other keyword source that we have that reflects that. And in terms of all of the Google algorithm stuff that is, okay, this query, this is the thing people are clicking on. If you're monitoring PAAs for when, your topics are in the news cycle or whether intent slowly shifts over time and you update it, that's what gets you the ranking again. So I've used like COVID as an example, really good example of gradual intent shift. So you can view historic data on AlsoAsked, and if you look at the COVID related questions 4 years ago, it's all kind of about the symptoms and how do I tell if I've got it, that kind of thing. And then as you move on over the years, it's basically like people are like, can I go outside now? And there's a lot less fear around the questions, and it's just kind of like, is there any legal thing I need to do? Do I need to wear a mask on a plane? That kind of thing. So again, to me, that's like hugely important in terms of making sure content is good, it's up to date, it's doing what users want it to do.
100%, Mark. Do you know, I was going to ask you about because like I said, I use it every day, but the evolution to see it over time, I've not come across that. So I need to deep dive a little more.
So it will save, by default at the moment, it saves any searches you've done over time. We did run a beta for a while of a timeline. So you could take any search you've done and you could schedule it and see it, and it would give you like a volatility score over the time. We rolled that back in the end because what we found is happening is, so these searches that you see Google display are sometimes slightly rewritten by Google, I think for testing purposes and clarity, but it might change it might just change the wording slightly. So we were getting like false positives on, oh, this question's changed, but it had just really been reworded. So I didn't want it to be unhelpful. So after we got the feedback, we took it out of beta. And what I'm looking at doing perhaps there is using an LLM to determine if the question is like the same question and then not include it in that calculation. Getting really into the boring trenches of, we thought this would be easy, but like anything in SaaS, it turns out to be actually really difficult and nuanced.
No, tell me about it. I know exactly what you mean. But no, it's good to hear the product roadmap and seeing what's on course. So
there's actually, if anyone uses Screaming Frog, so we wrote some custom JS for Screaming Frog that they like so much, it comes with Screaming Frog now. So if you go into the custom JS down to the bottom, there's an AlsoAsked one. And what you can do with that is you put in a ChatGPT API key, you put in an AlsoAsked API key, it crawls all your content, and basically it will automatically scrape your content, check the PAA answers against your content, and use ChatGPT to determine if you are not answering any of those questions. And then all of that appears in the Screaming Frog kind of tabular output. And so you get a list of, here is all your content and the potential content gaps, and you can just leave that running overnight. And that's something, we used to do manually in content audits that would take days.
So always interested in product growth and seeing like how you grow over time. Like what's your client base like on AlsoAsked, and like you were talked about MRR before. What kind of ballpark do you kind of look at on a monthly basis?
Yeah, so I'm a terrible marketer in that I haven't really done any what I would call proper marketing for AlsoAsked outside of kind of just me talking about it to people in SEO, and we've done some bits of sponsorship, mainly because it's fun. So we had some really fast initial growth, as I said, to kind of 5-figure MRR, and that's been just creeping up like a few % every month normally. So we're still kind of net growing every month. The interesting thing about the tool, I think from a user point of view and what I'm still learning, is quite a few people kind of drop in. And so it's a monthly subscription, but quite a few people drop in for like a month or 2 months when they need it for projects, and then they'll cancel and then they'll reactivate 6 months later. People that are, I guess, bigger agencies just get annual subscriptions, which is a bit nicer for us. It's, make it cheaper, but it's kind of more stable. The difficulty for us, and why we have to run it as a subscription tool, is when we have a new user sign up, we have to essentially scale a tiny bit and like allocate resource for them if they potentially wanted to use all of their like 1,000 searches immediately in a day. We need to be able to handle all of those spikes, which is why since day one we allocate like a monthly kind of allowance of searches that just resets every month. You can get pay-as-you-go credits now for the API because of the use case of people that use the API. We've had people literally buy like 100,000 credits and then they just chuck it at the system, which is fine. But I think, so I'm in a few groups where I talk to a lot of other SaaS owners like Sitebulb, InLinks, Keyword Insights, and it seems everyone is on the same kind of trajectory, roughly, of everyone's growing, but everyone has that initial kind of, you get your like easy customers that know of you, and then it's just a matter of if you're doing the right thing, people are getting value from your tool, they help people. And again, in terms of marketing, the most valuable thing for us and the thing that honestly makes me the happiest is every single year at like Brighton SEO, I've seen AlsoAsked in at least one presentation from someone I've never met, I've never spoken to them, and they're saying how helpful it is. And it's just really reaffirming to know that, okay, I've got some kind of, product market fit, if you want to call it that, because we're an agency, right? We use the tool, so I know what it needs to do. So and I think that's a really good bit of advice, I guess, for people trying to make a SaaS tool or anything, which is if you can solve your own problem, you're kind of onto a winner. You don't have to do as much like user research and what are your problems. It's like, I know the problems because we're dealing with them every single day. So yeah, in terms of searches, we cap it at, we do 1 million, we calculate to do around 1 million free searches a month. So at the moment, that means you don't need to sign up for an account. You just get 3 searches if you turn up on the site every day. And that more or less, give or take, works out just under 1 million every month. So people always ask for more free ones. And I'm like, literally, if I add like one more free search, it's like a 33% increase in cost. But we've tried to make it, again, accessible for everyone. Again, I guess warning for people doing SaaS stuff is initially we had, if you signed up for a free account, you'd get so many searches, and maybe unexpectedly, maybe I was naive, people just abused that. Mainly SEO agencies as well, and some quite big ones. Like I'd look and they'd signed up for like 30 free accounts. We're just hammering them all.
Yeah.
And I've explored things like geo pricing. So originally we had different price points, if you bought it in the US versus India and stuff, to try and, make it palatable for everyone. But again, unfortunately, I just started seeing people using VPNs to sign up to get cheaper access. So in the end, we settled for like kind of the lowest entry point that was feasible for us, around like $10 a month kind of thing. And again, you can have it for 1 month if you just need it, which hopefully it provides more than that in time saving and value, right?
Yeah, like I said, it's a fantastic tool that I use, and I've recommended it to clients as well. So everyone watching this should definitely check it out. I'm also keen for you. Like, is that what you love doing, the SaaS side, the growth, or is it more the SEO, or is it just a mix? Because by talking to you, it's like you want to do a service for the community, but you need to make money as well from it, right? That's a key part. But
Yeah.
you like the SaaS growth side of things, or are you more happier working with clients and working on SEO strategies?
That's a good question. So I mean, ultimately, like from my enjoyment point of view, I just enjoy learning how systems work and exploring like new knowledge. And the SaaS kind of thing was just a really interesting challenge. Trying to scrape Google 1 million times a month plus isn't easy because they don't like you doing it. So there's all kinds of interesting things there. I still enjoy doing SEO even after so long. There's always someone building some ghastly new JavaScript framework that I need to work out how to make work with search. So I think it's more for me like I enjoy the variety of being able to, it's a real privilege being able to flick between different types of work. So I do technical audit still. As I said, I do a lot of R&D stuff. I'm heavily involved in the strategy side for some of our clients, so helping guide, the team on, are we thinking about this? Why are we doing this? Because we've got some really amazing people around here. And one of the kind of things we aimed for at Candour is, I think, like, the average experience in SEO within the team is probably approaching a decade if you picked any one random person. So the amount I learn internally as well is amazing for me. And every team member here has got like a profit share, so everyone's like invested in clients as well. So yeah, I enjoy all of it, which I'm quite lucky in that regard. I've been in the situation, I've worked at agencies as an employee as well, where it's really sucked. Or I've just been like, I remember the first agency job I had was I was just the directory submission spreadsheet boy. It's like, here's 2,000 directories, go and copy paste.
Was it DMOS? Was that the main?
Yeah,
Wasn't it?
DMOS approval on a couple of people.
Yeah.
I've got my fingers crossed from 2003. Yeah, so I think variety, and this is why I'm excited about the whole AI stuff we spoke about as well. It's a whole new set of challenges, and I think while some people are scared of it, it to me just reminds me of the earlier days of SEO, which is there are now lots of unknowns, and I think that's really, really cool because we are in the vanguard to learn about that and work out what it means for businesses. So if anything, we're more valuable than ever because I think we're the best placed job role, if you like, to take that challenge on over more traditional marketers, over developers, etc.
Well, honestly, it's really insightful, right? Because I'll go through what I've learned from talking to you as well, because I've just launched with a co-founder of Zero, which is going into the SaaS world. So it's the first time. And it's something that I've not done before that I want to challenge and learn and develop and to keep pushing like myself with like stuff that you just wouldn't have been aware of. Like when we launched the products it's only like 5 weeks ago. It looks completely, thanks so much. Yeah. It started off well, very well. So much interest. And there's like you said, probably similar to you, that people that want to get, the recommendations you're getting in, there's no outbound at the moment. And yeah, I'm sure that will come, but but like it's just constantly learning and developing and trying to grow something. And that for me is what drives me. You don't know the answer to everything. And I'd never ever want a position like that. I find I lose myself too much to like reading a guide or watching a video, and you go, right, I've got up at like X a certain time. What have I achieved? Well, I've watched these 3 videos, which I've learned loads, but like, what have I done contributed towards the newsletter, the product, so it's this kind of, I think it's essential always to be curious and to keep wanting to make sure that you better yourself. And to the point with where we are now, it is a different world for what we're looking at, different areas. You've got Comet with Perplexity, that you've got, like we were talking about, AI mode, Claude, like all of these things now that come into play, and different use cases, and how we see incrementality, people using Google, then ChatGPT. So yeah, I'm very excited, like you are, at the unknown as well, because that keeps us very busy and keeps us learning and developing all the time. But yeah, and I've learned a lot from this chat in terms of the SaaS side, and I realize how much work is ahead to make this a success.
Yeah, it's everything has been harder than I guessed. So maybe you'll have a different experience, but that seems to be universal when I speak to SaaS people. There's a lot more work that goes into just maintenance than I thought as well. So product is great, new features are great, and then the biggest challenge is making it modular and sustainable and reliable over time as you add new features, trying to, we have to rip up all the carpet here to put this in. It's like, oh, that's a big job.
You won a bug bounty from Google a couple of years ago. Do you just want to explain what a bug bounty is and went about to kind of get it?
Sure. So a bug bounty is, lots of companies run these, and they are essentially like rewards for ethically reporting security flaws. Bunch of companies have these publicly, and they're pretty much like, if you find some security issue with our website, our product, our app, you email us there's normally like some guidelines, like a proof of concept, and you have to be able to do X and Y. They verify it, fix it, and then they give you money. It's an offset for people just not bothering. And some people do this professionally. They just live off finding these security flaws. I'm nowhere near talented enough to do that. And we found an exploit in Google search a couple of years ago. And when it got reported, they judged it. So they have a matrix of the severity of the impact and the likelihood that people would exploit it, and they rated it high in both of those categories. And the maximum bug bounty for that category was $13,337. So for those older people, it spells leet, which is their geeky little play on leet speak. We did actually donate that money to charity. So Google has a thing where they double it and donate it, but it had to be some kind of US registered charity. So each year, Candour nominates a local charity that we do fundraising for. So we weren't expecting to obviously get a bug bounty that year. It wasn't in the plan. So I submitted to the other directors like, well, we didn't expect to have this money, so should we just use this for the donation? And then they all, being very lovely people, were just kind of like, yes. I have to give credit as well. So it was actually one of the developers on the AlsoAsked team, Jack, who initially discovered this exploit. Kind of didn't think much of it until we were talking about it. And I was like, just let me see that output. And then we worked on it a bit. And I was like, actually, yeah, this is quite interesting. So this was, do you want any technical detail, I guess? Like how far do you want to go?
Yeah, please. No, just for the viewers, like, yeah, what was it that was uncovered? And I do, if I remember rightly, you said something like the Google engineers said it's the most accurate wrong art. I can't remember what it was. Something that was something
Yeah,
funny.
no. So this was as I did a presentation about my thoughts on how search engines work, how Google works, with some of the data from the exploit we've got. I kind of tried to put some bits of the jigsaw together. And yeah, a Googler was in the audience and spoke to me and gave me the greatest compliment I've had, which he said it was the least wrong explanation he had seen. Because obviously, they must be in the audience chuckling at us SEOs. Just it's the blind people describing the elephant, right? Everyone's got their own bit. It's like, oh, it's like a snake and it's like a tree trunk. So, essentially, what we found was through Google Chrome network data, when you do a search, you can see basically where it sends some of the requests. And don't ask me why, but we were just playing around kind of in the terminal, sending those requests ourselves to Google to see what was sent back. And one of the kind of parameters that is sent with the request was specifying the format to return the data in, because Google is essentially, in some way at least, a load of separate systems talking to each other. It's like, my job is this, and then I send the data here, and this tool uses this part of the data. So data's always kind of flying about. And the short version is, if we sent that network request and we removed the parameter that specified this format, it was just returning the data in like a structured kind of JSON style format in plain text. And the first thing kind of that raised my eyebrow was when we were getting data back where it was saying site quality score and then giving us a score. And I was like, that sounds interesting. And then the more I dug, there was like 2,000 something parameters there that were used on the front end of Google, which were around things like information retrieval, scoring. So literally like IDF scores. There was categories of queries, as to whether a score as to how commercial they were, whether it was a medical topic. There was tags as to, or scores, sorry, as to consensus, how the content was scored. And I was like, wow, this probably shouldn't be able to see this. So I messaged one of the kind of public facing Google people, and I was like, should I be able to access site quality score? And they kind of responded like, that doesn't sound right. So if I'm honest, we discovered that. We sat on it for a while because we were taking in a bunch of this data anyway with some scraping stuff we were doing. And I didn't really think too much about it because I was just super busy. And then I said, let's just collect some of this data for 6 months. And then I came back to review it, which is why in some of the presentations I've given like a breakdown of like the spread of site quality score. And we found things like how Google was categorizing queries, like this is a comparison query, this is a short fact, this is a Boolean answer. And we could get actual data then on how often each of these things were appearing. And then I did some work with some of the larger kind of SaaS tools being like, if I give you this data on how Google has classified these kind of things, can we see if there's correlations with types of search result? So, if it's a short fact, is it more likely to have a snippet, for instance? Or, here's site quality score. Does it correlate with your link scores? So we did some work there, found some things, found completely null results in others, which also then finding no result also gives you more knowledge because it rules things out. And I've been asked a bunch of times, like, why did you report that to Google? Right? Why didn't you just like use it, or why didn't you sell it to someone? Because someone was like, oh, I would have paid you twice what Google paid you for that. And the answer is, firstly, there were a few bits in there that I think you could act on. So, for instance, there seemed to be like predicted kind of click-through rates, which did change when we did things like update titles. So I'm guessing that's similar to the system they use in Google Ads, where they have that kind of scoring, which I assume is used in that first wave of where should we put this new result? We think it's going to be this, and then they actually get the user data. So again, I'm kind of like, well, even if you had that data, you write what you know is the good title, unless you're getting the good user data, it's not going to hold anyway. So I don't think there was really anything there where you could like, oh, I can exploit this for like, millions of pounds, whatever. Or maybe I was just too dumb to realize it. That's an option, I guess. And I didn't release all of the data publicly. One, because I was like, what will that achieve? If there is a way to do that, all I'm doing is essentially helping black hats. And I've got no problem with black hats, but essentially I have to compete against them with clients, and clients pay me for good results. So it's not really in my interest to do that. And then I was like, well, if we give it to Google, it'll get patched up, which, I think's better anyway in the long term. And we can give the money to charity. Everyone wins. We'll get some insights out of the actual data and can kind of share it. And yeah, I think it really helped my understanding of how certain kind of processes Google is doing work, and combined as well, because around all this time before I released this, we had the content warehouse leak, which I think was really confusing for people, because now when I talk about my Google exploit, sometimes people get those two things mixed up. The main difference being the content warehouse leak was essentially just like a library of, variables. It didn't actually give you the scores. Because we were getting like production data, we actually got the scores and the values for a lot of these variables, which was then really insightful, because I'm like, Google classifies all of these things as having date intent. It says, and I know there is a local intent and an explicit local intent, and just all those small things, you realize actually that there's a lot of Boolean kind of yes or no categorization that Google's doing. It's like those things where you drop the ball into the thing and it takes a path down, and you're ending up in different buckets. And like the site quality score was particularly interesting. So I'll finish off, I guess, that the thing we discovered kind of by accident there was, if you had a site quality score which was lower than 0.4, you were not eligible for like the rich results. And you see all these people like You're being like, oh, to get featured snippets, you need to write like this, like that. And it's like, well, actually, it could be because you're not even in the race. And site quality score is basically calculated on what you said earlier, Andy, which is the number of brand searches pretty much divided by how many times people actually click on your result. And that's how Google is calculating at least this metric, site quality score, to see essentially if people cared about your brand and if they actually wanted to see your brand. And if nobody had an interest in your brand, you don't get featured snippets, basically. It's the short version.
I think that's honestly a great story and a great achievement from like you and the team. And I think that you've got really valuable insights that have come from that, and you've donated it to a great like cause. So, I mean, hats off to you and the team, and we're all very grateful for the work that you guys have done on that. Mark, thank you so much for your time today. I've learned loads. I've really enjoyed the discussion. If people want to follow you, you've got a great LinkedIn account, honestly, for insight, for humor, and for challenging, but in a very positive way. I definitely would recommend you follow Mark on LinkedIn. But yeah, where can everyone else find you, Mark, on anywhere else?
So I'm on Blue Sky as well. That's kind of my personal platform of choice. But if you Google Mark Williams Cook, I think I'm the only Mark Williams Cook on the internet, for better or worse. I'm very easy to find. The only thing I guess I'd give a shout out for is the newsletter we do, which is called Core Updates. And hopefully if you just Google Core Updates, it'll be number one. And that's like weekly, very short, sharp. These are the interesting things happening just in the SEO search space. So I don't care if Google's changed, the font they're using. That kind of stuff doesn't make it into the newsletter. It's what might affect your job and you might have to know or do something about. It's the newsletter I wanted. So you can read the whole thing if you like in like 30 seconds, and then you're better off for the week.
So we've got director of an agency, a newsletter, and a SaaS product as well. And a boxer as
and
well.
A podcast.
And a podcast.
And an SEO course.
Yeah,
it's busy.
It never stops, does it?
It's busy.
But Mark, thank you so much for your time. Take care, and I hope to speak to you soon.
Brilliant. Thanks, Andy.